What's up, everybody? How are you doing? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel, and today I want to talk about the Nintendo Switch Online's crazy revenue and why it might be good for Nintendo's business, but it's bad for us game fans who want the return of the Virtual Console. So we all know what the Switch Online service is. There are two tiers that exist currently, right? There's the basic tier for $20 a year. There's the expansion pack tier for $50 a year. And this is something that was a bit divisive when it started to release, because it started to let us know that maybe Nintendo was never going to revive the Virtual Console that was very successful on the Wii and the Nintendo 3DS, and reasonably successful on the Wii U as well. Something that they kind of dropped hints near the beginning of the Switch's life that they might be bringing the Virtual Console or a new version of it to the Switch, which was exciting, and most of us game fans and Nintendo fans wanted to see that happen. But once the Switch Online service started to roll out and we got an idea of their pricing and the structure and the legacy consoles attached to it, it started to signify to us that maybe Nintendo was just never going to do that, and instead they'd rather have a subscription model only. Now, a lot of people may have different opinions on whether this is good or bad. I personally fall under the camp of I would rather just have a Virtual Console storefront to buy individual games I want to own digitally, as opposed to pay monthly and yearly subscriptions for games that I only have access to as long as I continue to give Nintendo my money for. That's not my preferred way to play and access video games. I'm sick of everything in our life nowadays being subscription models. From socks to underwear to video games to movies to freaking just everything. Even if you want freaking stamps, you have an option for a subscription service. And obviously I do pay for some of these. I mean, I live in this modern world, so I do that. But I don't love it, and I want to see less of these. So on the gaming side of things, I would just rather have access to a Virtual Console. Maybe you don't feel that way. Maybe you prefer the Switch Online subscription service, regardless of which tier you have. And I mean, that's fine. Everyone's allowed to have their own opinion. But I personally would like to see the Virtual Console come back. And I'm one of the people who is holding on to the slightest glimmer of hope that maybe one day in the future, Nintendo might find a way to recreate a Virtual Console in a way, even if they were just going to make some legacy games available for purchase, but not every legacy game available for purchase. Something like that would have been really great to see. However, this new information about the revenue that Nintendo is making from the online service, to me, is a clear indicator that the Virtual Console is probably dead forever. So this whole thing is pretty wild, man. What's basically happened is, as Microsoft gets closer and closer to closing their deal of purchasing Activision, yes, this is Microsoft and Activision's merger that is revealing this information, as crazy as it sounds. As Microsoft gets closer to closing that deal, it was identified through, I guess, business industry sharings of revenues for a variety of different revenue streams. In Brazil, it was identified by one of their regulatory bodies how much money Nintendo made in 2021 from their online service. And it was revealed that they made $932 million just from Switch Online subscription services, whether it's basic tier, expansion pack, or whatever, family packs, all of the different combined services. That's how much Nintendo made. $1 billion, basically, just from people like you and me paying Nintendo annually or monthly to have access to the online service. That is an extremely high amount of money. And I knew it was going to be a lot of money. It was clearly a profitable and successful venture for Nintendo. But just speaking for myself, and probably for a lot of you guys out there, this is a lot more than even I expected. Based on public data made available by Nintendo and compiled by TweakTown, the Switch Online service made up 31% of Nintendo's total digital revenues, which apparently was $3 billion, and just 8% of the company's overall dedicated video games earnings, which is $14.3 billion. If I'm reading this right, I think that that's saying that in 2021, Nintendo's overall digital game sales totaled $3 billion. And of that, 31% of it, basically 1/3 of that total, is made up of people just paying for the Switch Online service, which makes sense. This is $3 billion total. Switch Online, they made almost $1 billion. So yeah, that's basically 1/3. And then apparently their entire video game software sales was $14 billion in 2021. And of course, that $1 billion just made by Switch Online, well, that basically is 8% of that total. So this is a long way to say that the amount of money Nintendo is making from Switch Online makes up a massive chunk of their overall revenue and overall profit for their entire business as a company. And so here's the thing. I mean, this is great for Nintendo. It's great for their bottom line. It's great for their spreadsheets and their P&Ls. And so, yeah, I mean, that's good. I'm sure all of these companies, Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, Steam, all of these different platforms, they're clearly doing well and making money hand over fist. And I think most businesses and industries that are relying on subscription services now are. Clearly, the subscription model of business is proving popular and successful enough that most industries, including gaming, are heavily relying on it wherever they can. And so if Nintendo is going to be making $1 billion off of Switch Online right now, you bet your ass they're going to keep doing it for as long as they possibly can. Which, of course, brings us back to the focus of the conversation, and it's the fact that if Nintendo can make this much money off of Switch Online and be this successful and this profitable, then in what world would it ever make sense for them to try a virtual console again? And it's a really sad truth, but it's a truth that we just have to acknowledge. And I discussed this, I don't remember the context, but sometime last year, I made a video breaking down the lack of the virtual console, the success of subscription services and Switch Online. This was before we knew today's dollar amount total. This was just as a general concept. And I kind of broke it down how, at the end of the day, Nintendo was probably making more money off of people regularly giving them money through subscription services than just buying a one-off game for $5 or $10 a pop from a virtual console storefront a few times a year. Even though that's preferred to us, for most of us, and I think it's also way more consumer friendly, it's clearly not going to be as profitable or successful as something like a silly subscription service. And now that we've seen the numbers, we know it's even more true than I thought at that time. And so we just have to go back to breaking down the differences in these different services, right? A virtual console, the way it operated on the Wii and the 3DS and the Wii U, it was awesome. You could select Super Nintendo Store, NES Store, Genesis Store, TurboGrafx 16, Game Boy Advance eventually showed up, Nintendo 64, Neo Geo. I mean, all of these platforms were becoming available on those three Nintendo consoles, Wii, 3DS, and Wii U, and you could just say, I want to browse NES games or TurboGrafx games, and just for a few bucks a pop, buy them one time for a one-time fee, download it to your console, and you had it forever every time you turned that console on. You no longer needed the internet. You didn't need to pay for it monthly or annually. It was just yours, and you owned it, just like we're supposed to own our video games, but it was just downloaded to your machine. And that was fine, and we all loved it. But how often were people really doing that compared to the amount of people, in the tunes of millions of us, paying Nintendo every single year guaranteed money, $5 a month, $20 a year, $50 a year, $80 a year, or whatever it is for the family plan? That is guaranteed money for as long as people allow themselves to be signed up for the service, as opposed to people who may choose to almost never go to a virtual console and spend $10 to download a Nintendo 64 game. As I said earlier, it's more consumer friendly to offer that, and most of us gamers prefer that, but Nintendo is making more money with this silly, stupid subscription thing, just like Xbox and Sony and Netflix and everyone. They're all making more money this way, and so it's going to kill the traditional storefront and even the virtual console. And so more than anything, I just wanted to make this video and have this quick conversation with you guys to lament the loss of the virtual console. I think that we've officially seen a sign that there's no reason for Nintendo to ever bring back that business model again. I mean, maybe if their next generation turns out to be so unsuccessful again that asking people to pay subscription services isn't making them any money. Let's pretend they have another console that doesn't do very well, and I don't think that will happen. I think we all expect their next console to be successful, but let's just pretend for a second that it's not successful. And so maybe so few people would be signing up for a subscription service that Nintendo says, you know what? We actually have a better chance of making money if we just offer people the ability to go back to buying one-off games for $5 to $10 a pop. That might be the one scenario where Nintendo revisits a virtual console or a digital storefront. Yeah, maybe that happens. But I think that chance is so unbelievably slim that it's basically not even worth considering, in my opinion. I think their next console, it's going to be a big hit again. They're going to keep subscription services going. I'm sure that they're going to make it so everyone who's paying for Switch Online now can transfer that subscription service over to their next machine, just like Microsoft and Sony did, so that they can keep making the same money and increasing that huge revenue of $1 billion into their next generation. In which case, if they do that, then they will never bring back the Virtual Console. And you know what? I love the Virtual Console. I think it was better than Switch Online, and I'm extremely sad, even though I understand it, I'm extremely sad that we're really just never going to see it happen again.